I need to do something about getting my phone sorted, but I have to take the
Yeah.
photos off my phone first. Maybe this is what we're going to talk about today. I have to take the photos off my phone first, and then I have to put it in an envelope. Then I have to go to the post office. Then I have to find the email with the postal thing on it, so the Australia Post can print it off and put it on. And there are so many steps in the way of me actually posting my phone back that I'm looking at it
Yes.
going, I can hear it in my brain. There are too many steps. I need to wait until it's almost like I need to wait until the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky are all in alignment before I can take this one particular action.
Sure. Sure.
And then yesterday, actually, I had a conversation unexpectedly. There are two of you, one after another, which I don't normally do. I normally do one a week, but somehow it got booked that I had a call yesterday with Nick, and now I'm having this one with you. And the one with Nick yesterday was, we were talking a lot about action and how with Spencer, I realized I knew it on a logical level, but this time it fell in and I really got it on a visceral level that I actually do have a choice. That even though I felt like I haven't had a choice, I've been completely controlled like a puppet by all the brain strings. With Spencer, it was really, I do have a choice. And then with Nick, it was, okay, now can I make the choice? Am I going to make the choice?
Right. Are you going to
take the action? And then going on the back of posting off my phone, the thing that came up was I decided this morning I was going to do a meditation. And I'm sharing this because I feel like it happens to me all the time. And I figure this happens to so many people who are stuck in trauma, and maybe not even stuck in trauma, is that I had intended to sit down and do a meditation this morning. And so I got up and did all my normal things. I spent some time with my daughter, and then I washed the dishes, and then realized after I washed the dishes that it was a little bit later than what I thought it was. So I needed to let the chickens out before I sat down to do a meditation. I was going to do a meditation first, but it was too late. So then I went out and let the chickens out. And then as I was walking back, I saw the box of meat and I went, damn, that meat's going to be thawed out. I can't leave it here for another couple of hours. I have to do that right now. So then I had to come upstairs and get the containers and go downstairs. And then that time, that half an hour that it took me to put all the meat in the containers for the dogs was my meditation time. And then my daughter said to me when I came, she said, so are you going to do a meditation now? I said, that was my meditation. that was my meditation time taken up with putting meat in containers for the dogs. And this is, I guess, a pattern, which is every action I take seems to always be it's either for the dogs, for the cats, for the chickens, for the guinea fowl, for people who might be watching something that I create online, for my daughter, for society's rules, but it's never for me. So I think that is what you and I are going to talk about. That's a very long-winded.
No, it wasn't. I was following it and it was all relevant. All relevant. I mean, I think doing things for ourselves, especially as a mom, right? It can become very foreign to us because it's not natural. We go into this mom mode, and sometimes even prior to that, especially if prior to being a parent, we have been like that anyways, where we're just kind of people pleasers or just sacrificial in nature. And then we have kids, and then it just kind of exacerbates all of that. And I think it's really easy. I mean, I've caught myself in this as well, where I will have a plan to do something. Maybe it's yoga or meditation, like you said, with this situation. And the timing won't line up for whatever reason. Maybe I overslept. Maybe the kids were just particularly difficult that morning and breakfast was late, whatever may have happened. And my window of time that was scheduled, right? Well, that's gone now. That's gone. And now, okay, I guess I have to just move on, right? And there's a part of that that's really good because it's good sometimes to just go with the flow. Sometimes we have to do that and just kind of not worry about when certain things don't get done. But that really has a lot to do with just us putting ourselves on the back burner. And so when you were talking about that, what I was thinking was, you're not really making yourself a priority, right? For whatever reason in your brain, it's just like, I'm not making myself a priority, or maybe you believe you're not a priority, and that may be what that is as well. There are a lot of things to do. I'm sure you're very, very busy. All of us are busy, right? And when we do all these tasks, letting the chickens out, doing the meat for the dogs, those are all things we have to do, but it's also like a form of procrastination in a sense, like we're busying ourselves with these tasks that are necessary, but we're really avoiding what we should really be prioritizing, right?
I guess in theory, I mean, I have to let the chickens out. They can't stay in the coop. Otherwise, they all
Sure.
start attacking
I
each
get it. I
other.
have chickens. I have chickens. So I get
But,
it.
but I didn't have to help my daughter make the bed. And I didn't have to wash the dishes. I do know that if I don't get up and wash the dishes straight away, first thing in the morning, if it's not one of the first 2 or 3 things that I do in the morning, it is a bigger struggle for me to wash them. And I will
Sure.
usually then look at them and go, nah, she'll be right. I'll do it later. And then I don't do it until the next day. And then I have 2 days worth of dishes and I now have to
Sure.
wash. But yeah, so I did think that this is what we were going to talk about when I missed the meditation. And I did think that we need to have a conversation on how do people make themselves a priority. Like for me, I've become acutely aware that in this world, I feel like I have no value. Like there's just
Mm-hmm.
none. I was of no value in my family. I haven't done anything in the world that creates any kind of value. So and also because we're kind of raised with society that whatever you do in the external world is really what you base your value on. So if you don't have money, if you don't have a successful career, if you don't have a husband and children, which I don't have, I have a kid, but I don't have a husband. There are all of these things that are deemed things that make you valuable. And if
Right.
you don't carry on through any of those, if you don't go through university, if you don't finish school, I didn't even finish school, then all of a
Sure.
sudden you lose value. But I guess the conversation we could have today is how do you find value in yourself just for being you, so then you are a priority? How do we move ourselves up to be at the top of the list? Because I really do believe that as a human being, we should be at the top of the list,
Yeah.
not all the way down the bottom.
Right. Well, even logically, we know, right? We know that prioritizing ourselves, right? Like if you prioritize yourself, you know logically that that's going to cause a ripple effect with other people around you, right? If you're taking care of yourself, that means that other people are going to be blessed, I guess you could say, by you, doing self-care. And there's a logical part of that, right? I think this is a lot of, and again, this is something I've struggled with as well, and it's something that's a journey. I don't think we ever really get perfect at it. Even the people who act like they have it all together and have this piece all figured out, it's just not true. I don't think. This is just all about growth and a journey. And as far as finding our value, I've been in places in my life before where I truly believed I had no worth and value, and my life really reflected that based off of the decisions I made and how I was living my lifestyle. But what's interesting is that we're so critical of ourselves. I mean, you say, well, I recognize that I don't feel like I have value, but really, what is valuable in a person? I mean, if you think about somebody that you admire, that you look up to, what are things about that person that you really value? Can you think of anybody like that?
I don't know if there is anyone in the world that I look up to. I think the closest I would come to admiring someone would probably be James Wedmore. I
Okay.
don't know if you know who he is, but he is an incredible coach from a business but also spiritual aspect. He molds both of them together, and he's extraordinarily authentic, and he's just an all-round good guy. From anyone that I know that has met him and spent time with him or done coaching, personal one-on-one coaching with him, they all say he is who he is. Like, who you see is who he is. And I guess the thing,
authenticity.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I admire about him is that, and I have been following him for probably about 15 years. He's really the only like coach mentor that I've and I followed him. I've watched him go from starting his first online business, and then I've actually watched the progression of the entire journey for the last 15 years. So
wow, that's amazing.
I've seen his journey and I've seen him change. And I think the thing I really like about him is his character, is that openness and humor that he has about life, and willingness to dive into life, and his ability to make bucket loads of cash, because I think he's now up to about 12. I think they're expecting to do 12 million this year in business. So he doesn't have it, it's not a small business, but when I first started following him, he wasn't even doing, I think, 10,000, 20,000 a year. Like, he was right at the start of his journey.
Starting low.
Yeah, he was starting low. So I think he would probably be the closest person that I come to admire, mainly because I have watched him for such a long time.
Do you think you have any of those values? I mean, maybe not making 12 million a year, not many of us are making that, but being authentic and being strong in character. And if he built a business from nothing, he most likely has resilience, right? I mean, there's certain things that you have to just push through and build any business from the ground up. I mean, do you think you have any qualities like that? Because I'm just asking, because if you admire those in other people, I'm just curious if you notice any of that within yourself.
Definitely an element of authenticity in doing these videos and coaching calls. Obviously, I could, but it would be a waste of my time and the time of the person that I'm talking to if I had a mask on. So a lot of it is me putting down the mask and sharing, just being as vulnerable as I can. Which I don't do with people in person. It's weird. I do not do it with any of my friends or anyone that is in my personal space, but I can do it with a random stranger online who's on the other side of the world.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Is that, I mean, on video?
Sure. But that's a little, okay. So, I mean, to me, I think the difference there is like, yes, we're face to face right now, but the chances of us meeting again, right, is pretty slim to none, right? You're on the other side of the world. I mean, is that part of that? Because that's what I would think too.
Maybe, I don't know. I think there's safety in it for me, because I guess I can put distance between myself and the person I'm having a conversation with. Them. I'm not looking them in the eye. I'm not feeling their as much energy as I would if they were right in front of me. They can't see me as well because it's on a computer screen, it's on a monitor, there's distance there. But then on the other side of it, I'm also putting it up on YouTube. So I'm opening myself up to vast amounts of criticism and judgment and negativity, which thankfully I have not had on any of my episodes.
Good.
But there is, and I the reason why I said that was because there's part of my brain that just said, aren't you worried about all the negativity? Like, isn't that negativity a reason for you not to actually do this? And then I think, well, maybe, but so far I haven't had any negativity. So, like,
but you know, it's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But I guess I also know underneath that any negativity that comes is from them, not because of me. I know I'm not responsible for their negative comment. I didn't create it. I'm not even the cause of it. I might be a catalyst, but I'm not the cause.
Right.
And I guess that is kind of my savior in that, is that I really do understand on a deep level, I am not the cause of anyone's negative comments.
Right. Well, that's true though with people in person as well.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit more in person.
But you know what I mean though? Like, I
I
mean, you're
do.
right. Absolutely. It's not your problem. You're right. Uh, but it's the same with people in our family. I mean, we care about those people more. I understand this personally because I can get up in front of complete strangers and give a speech, for example, and I'm totally fine with that. Not to say there aren't some nerves, but I'm pretty okay with that. But if you put me in like a Zoom with 5 of my family members, I'm going to be a little more guarded. It's just not because I can't open up to them individually, but that to me is a lot more, there's more fear there for me because I love them and I care more about what they think and their opinions. I also know them more, so I can, in this sense, I kind of know what some of them are thinking. And so there's a lot of factors there when with it's people that you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
true. Yeah, yeah. I don't have that problem with my family because I don't have any family. So that solves that problem.
well, but you said friends though. You said friends, right?
Yeah, but I don't have any friends around me. So these are friends that all live a couple of hours away that I
Okay.
now rarely have conversations with because everybody's so busy. Everybody's so
Yeah.
wound up in their own bubbles that
Hmm.
now that we've moved away, we just don't see them, and we don't have any friends that we've found where we are now.
Hmm.
And that is, I mean, that is part of the trauma, is going, for me, it was going into isolation and
Yeah.
separating myself from people, mainly because, I guess, because of the mask, because it was exhausting and it is hard. When, for me, I'm a chameleon, so I will be whoever I need to be for the person that's in front of me. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't do anything that might hurt me emotionally or physically or mentally or spiritually. I will be whoever I need to be for that person in front of me. And my dad used to tell me that he thought I was schizophrenic. And one day he said,
Mm.
I've watched you. And he said, you are a different person depending on who you're talking to. And it's
Interesting.
always stuck in the back of my mind. And then in my 30s, when I was diving into a lot of this stuff, I looked and I went, oh, I'm not schizophrenic, I'm a chameleon.
Yeah.
Because or partly 50% because of him. Because when you're raised in an environment where you're surrounded by a lot of criticism and a lot of judgment and a lot of manipulation, you have
Yeah.
to become whoever you need to be for the person in front of you so they
Sure.
don't punish you.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I've done that before. I think chameleon is it's a really good picture of how to describe that. And it can feel really inauthentic. It's really an inauthentic way to live, and it's a very frustrating way to live.
Yeah.
When I used to do that, I remember feeling almost like a liar a lot of the times. I wouldn't intentionally do it. It was kind of, and I don't know if you find this more on a subconscious level, I would realize that I did that in hindsight, like afterwards, and in the conversation that I would have, I'd be like, I agreed with things that I don't really agree with. I'm not really sure why I even responded this way, but it was such an automatic response on my part that I didn't really realize it till afterwards. And then I would be stuck in this, well, I already acted like that around this person. And I guess I have to now maintain that because if not, how do I get out of that? Right. And it was this very like, it just ended up being so much anxiety. I had to work a lot on just being okay with myself as a person and just releasing any fear of judgment because really it wasn't that I was fearful of the other people judging me. That wasn't the purpose. It was like, oh gosh, if like I would judge myself basically. It was like, is what I'm thinking okay? Is my is it okay to have a different opinion? Is it okay to have different thoughts? Is it okay to be myself, right? And just learning to be okay with like who you are as a person and but you have to know that, right? We have to know who we are. I don't know, do you feel like you struggle with a personal identity? Like, do you feel aligned in that sense of who you are as a person and who you are internally and how you are externally? Does that feel like an alignment?
Absolutely not. There is no alignment between who I am on the inside and then
That's
who I
okay.
am, except I guess one of the reasons I have kept these calls going, because I had my podcast all last year, and one of the reasons I'm really enjoying doing this is because I can be whatever I am in the moment with the person that I'm sitting in front of, because I have this trust that whoever I'm talking to in the moment is exactly who I'm meant to be talking to, and whatever we
Sure.
talk about is exactly whatever we're meant to talk about. There's so much authenticity in that for me.
Hmm.
But I resonate so much with what you said, because there are people in my life now that I'm meeting, new people that I'm meeting because we're in a new area, and
Sure.
I'll go out and they'll say something and I'll find, and it'll be something that I don't necessarily agree with, or it's a perspective that I don't have. But
Hmm.
instead of sharing my perspective, I'll kind of laugh it off and sort of like, oh yeah, 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 I hear you.
Yeah, right.
But not like I don't disagree. I just say, oh yeah, I hear you. Yeah, yeah, I know, right?
I have been there and I've done that. So,
And I know it's because I don't want the person not to like me. I also do not want the conflict. I do not want the arguments. I do not want to feel uncomfortable with the person in front of me. The world is such a small place that
it
there are
really
not
is. Yeah.
there are not enough people in this world for me to feel like I can have this person not like me and be okay with it. Um,
Okay.
just based on my experience, it doesn't seem to matter where I go. People just seem to find out about me. I will meet someone and they'll go, "Oh, you're Kaylee Grace." It's like, "Yep." How do you know that? Oh, I know so and so who knows so and so who knows so and so that you know had that thing with you, and I'm like, how is this even possible? And I think
Yeah.
I realized the world was small because I was living at the time. I was living with my ex, and this was in Sydney. Now, Sydney is not a small place, and there are
Right.
millions of houses in Sydney. And just by happenstance, we moved into a house, and his ex-girlfriend was best friends with the people who lived next door, and she moved in to live with them. So now we're
Oh,
living next door to his ex-girlfriend who actually hated him. And it was in that
oh
moment
gosh.
where something in my brain just went, this world is not big enough. Like, this is how is this humanly possible? And that's kind of been my experience, is that the world is just, everybody seems to know everybody. It doesn't matter where you live. At some point, if you live somewhere long enough, you're going to find people that know you, that have had something with you. And then add that to the upbringing of not wanting to be punished. So if you're raised
Hmm.
in an environment where you're punished if you're good and you're punished if you're bad, it doesn't matter what you do, you're still punished. You
Sure.
spend your time not wanting to get punished and then doing whatever you can to not get punished. And then punishment I kind of put under the hat of rejection,
Hmm.
abandonment, someone
Right.
sneering at you, a negative comment, someone laughing at
Sure.
you, something that there are so many things that come under that
Of
heading.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
That everything that you said made complete sense. But what I don't know how to do is, I guess, I really struggle with being authentic in front of people in person, because
Hmm.
I really have this belief inside me that is, if that person really knew me, they wouldn't like me. Like, they wouldn't like me at all. So I shouldn't be who I am. I need to be who they want me to be so they like me. And it's a very hard program to undo.
Yes. Because it's automatic. It really is kind of an auto. pilot thing, like I said, until you kind of, I know for me it was in hindsight, right? And it sounds like in the moment it is very difficult because it's just these responses. And then even
Yeah.
if you realize it after you, like you said, you kind of just laugh off, yeah, okay, whatever. Even if you realize right after that second that you said that, I mean, how do you get out of that what you just said? Like, oh no, I'm sorry. I don't, that's not what I meant to say. You know, it can be very, it can feel very awkward. Um, my question to you is like in those moments, what do you think, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Literally, like genuinely, what is the worst thing that could happen if you were to share your perspective on something and it differed from that person? What is like literally the worst thing that could possibly happen?
They slap me in the face and turn around and walk away.
Okay, there you go. That's pretty bad. All right. They slap you in the face and they walk away. That's pretty bad. But could you recover from that?
Yes, yes, it'd take a bit to recover from that emotionally, but
Sure.
yeah.
Yes. But it's recoverable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, probably the worst thing that is going to happen, right? I mean, yes, people can respond that way. Let's just, of course, acknowledge that. But realistically, the worst thing is like somebody might be, oh my gosh, I can't believe you think that, right? I mean, that's a pretty, I've gotten that response from people before, and that can feel really frustrating, but it can also feel very like when we're not really sure of our own values, it can rock us a bit, especially when we're not really solid in those.
Mm.
Um, do you feel like, I mean, we've talked about authenticity, but what about like core values? Like, do you know what your core values are? Like, what really grounds you in life? Like, what's your compass? Do you know what I mean by core values when I say that?
I do. I used to have some really core values, and then a few things happened, and
Mhm.
life kind of rocked those values, like really shook them into
Mhm.
pieces.
Yeah.
And I haven't really been able to pick them back up again because a lot of my core values were around the universe and everything is exactly how it's meant to be. Everything is working for you, not against you. Um, Everything that happens in the world, I'm always going to be taken care of no matter what. There were some really
Mhm.
key values that I could really sit on and anchor
Mhm.
into. But then I went through some massively gigantic traumatic experiences that
Yeah.
really made me sit back and go, well, if there was a universe or a God or whatever, why? Why put me through this? Like what's the purpose? What's the point? What's the benefit? I can't see how this is working for me right now. and
Yeah.
um and I still struggle with that. I can see the benefit of what happened, but I still sit in the, yeah, but did my mum really have to die for that? Like, did she really have to die for me to be in this position right now? Could it not have happened any other way than my
Yeah.
mum having to die? And yeah, so my core values have been a little bit shattered. I'm working at building them back up again, but again, it's not like someone walked up and slapped me in the face and I can kind of work through that.
Mhm.
Or I lost all my money and I can kind of work through that. It's I now physically cannot, like my mum's not coming back. And
Mhm.
she
How
left
long ago?
6 years ago now, but
6
we
years ago.
found out that she was dying when my daughter was 4 months old. So
Mm.
I was, my daughter is a donor, so I'd always planned to be a single mum, but I'd never planned to be a single mum without my mum.
Mm.
So that
Yeah.
that has been a very big, like it just shattered my existence, realizing that not only am I a single mum, but now I'm alone as a
Sure.
single mum.
Yeah. Being a single parent is hard enough. Like, when something like that happens, it's shattering. I know I'm a single parent. Um, I guess you could say by choice because I initiated my divorce. That was from an abusive marriage, so I get that. Um, when when you were talking about your core values, you were saying that you used to feel like, okay, well, the universe, everything happens for a reason, right? Everything is however it is in this moment. This is how it should be. I think you said that earlier, like I'm talking with who I'm supposed to be talking to. This is basically like divine, right? Like this is whatever happens, there's no coincidences. So when I say like core values, what I mean is like my core values, for example, integrity, um, trust, respect, freedom, peace. Those are like core things that are like in my being that I essentially when they act as a compass for me. And at times when I have been really low and in my people pleasing stages, when I was doing things like you said, like a chameleon with other people, or just really just in this place of being stuck and feeling like, ugh, I mean, there's just no really word to put to it. A lot of it was because my actions, my daily steps, my daily choices and decisions each day really were very wishy-washy when it came to those core values. Was I living with integrity? I sometimes not really. I it was still important to me, but the truth is I was lying for my ex who was an addict. I was covering for him. I was doing a lot of things that were just not in alignment with that. I didn't feel like I deserved respect because of that as well. And I certainly didn't feel like I was living a life of freedom or peace. I felt like I was chained and stuck. And so I guess that's what I mean by core values. Like there's a lot of different ones that you can have, but the things that are like extremely important to you, like non-negotiables in life that you have that you're like, even like what you picture in your ideal life. Like if you can picture what your ideal day is like, your ideal life feels like, even like what things come up to you, because that's a way that you can uncover some of those as well as just asking yourself, like, what is it about whatever your ideal day looks like what is it about that that's really sticks out to you that feels good and resonates like on a soul level? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I have one core value which I have held on to throughout all of this entire journey, which is kindness. It's probably it is my deepest core value, is always, no matter what's happening, always choose kindness. I struggle with that, aiming that at myself, but it's one of those values that even if I'm angry, I still choose words that I can express the anger and be kind through that anger.
Right.
I don't have to be mean or nasty or any of the. I don't have to hurt the person just because I'm angry with something that they've done. I can always choose kindness. So that is probably, going from your core value example, that would be my strongest and I think probably only core value that I have. It's kind of like the only one I've been able to hold on to.
That's good though. I mean, even if it's just one, I mean, some people don't even know how to answer that question at all. And they're just like, I don't know. I'm not sure what's important to me. And it's like, well, that's where you need to start then. Let's figure that out. So I think that's great. I mean, do you feel like with that one kindness, do you feel like you're living in alignment with that, like towards other people and yourself?
Definitely towards other people. I would not say I am. It's hard to say whether I'm living in kindness to myself, because maybe I do. I was about to say, I do not actively say negative things about myself, but then I do remember not that long ago where I was standing there and something had happened, and I was standing there going, how could you be the kind of person that has the brain that you had that made that decision? So I guess I still chose kindness. I wasn't sitting there going, you're an idiot, you're so stupid, like you know, what part of your brain was not functioning that day. And I wasn't slapping myself. I was still choosing kind words.
Sort of, yeah.
To say,
Right.
you're an idiot.
It was a nicer way of saying that, but I think
Yes, it was a
it's still
nicer
a
way.
negative. It's a nicer way, a little sugar-coated way of saying it, I guess. That's funny.
But definitely 100% towards my daughter. I have not ever said a single unkind thing towards her. I'm extraordinarily careful about the words that I use with her. But definitely not towards myself. It's not I don't know why it's not a value towards me, but I guess it comes back to how I see myself and how little value. So I guess there's some part in me that kind of goes, well, everybody else deserves kindness, but you have no value. So therefore,
yeah,
it doesn't matter about you. Like you're not of any value. So you can just say whatever you want to say to yourself.
Is that lack of worth and lack of value like rooted in past decisions that you've made? Like when you think about, if you ask yourself, why don't I have any value? Why don't I think that? Is there something that immediately comes up in your brain? Maybe
It's
even a moment or a memory.
It's two causes. So the first one was my family and different ways that they reacted to things that I did in the past. And then that got anchored in with me then adding to that by not holding down jobs and not having money and not living in a stable house and doing all of these things that goes against the values that my family have and just reinforcing. So I've reinforced something that was already there.
Okay.
I've just got to let a cat in. She's meowing at the door like crazy. So keep talking.
You're fine. I hear the cat.
Can you hear her?
Okay.
Come on.
I can hear her, yes.
Come on. I know, I'm sorry. Just thought you'd go away. And she's like, no, I'm not going away. I want attention. I want a pat.
Yeah, I was asking that because I sometimes when we think about like why there's certain memories that come up for us when we think about like why we don't have value or why we don't have worth. And so I was just curious if there's like a certain memory that kind of popped up with that or something specific. I mean, you said that your actions, like things that you did not align with your family's core values, which was what, holding a job, right? Making money, right?
Having an education.
Yeah. Even though logically we know there's plenty of people out there who do fine without any of those things, right? Without a ton of money, without a booming business, and without a college education, whatever it may be, right? People have different paths that they take. But it sounds like you're putting a lot of weight on your family's like values that they had for you, or possibly even that you're beating yourself up for some of those decisions. Like, do you feel yourself beating yourself up for things like that in the past? Like, just kind of like, oh man, that was so stupid. Like, why did I do that? Why does that feel like something that you do?
Yep. Frequently go back, not as much now as I did. I used to do it a lot, but I still do go back and look and go, why did I make that decision at that choice? If I'd made a different decision, then none of that would have happened. So let's say, for instance, I knew at my engagement party, I was sitting on the couch, everybody was dancing, having an amazing time, and I was sitting there looking at the person I was about to marry, and I knew in that second I didn't want to marry him. I knew I did not want to get married to him. There was no part of me that wanted to marry him. But I got married and stayed there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to say, I don't want to marry you. Like, there's no part of me that wants to marry you. I didn't know how to say that. I didn't know how to displease the volume of people that would have been displeased had I said, I don't want to marry you, because everybody was so happy that we were getting married. And yeah, I look back at that moment sometimes and go, God, if only I was a person that had gumption, that could have stood up and said, I don't want to marry you, then I probably wouldn't have ended up as financially in the shithole as I was, because when I went into the relationship, I did not have any debt. I did not walk into that relationship with debt, but I walked out with a crap load, whereas they walked into the relationship with a crap load of debt. So I walked out with that debt because I was married to them. It became mine, right?
Sure. Lovely.
Yeah, so these choices that I guess, I've made, where I go, if only I'd made a different choice. And then I do understand with other people, they go, yes, but everything happens for a reason. It's like, I do struggle. Well, I feel like that's just washing that under the bridge and then going, I don't need to become an authentic person. I don't need to become someone with integrity. I don't need to become someone with gumption or strength, because everything happens for a reason. And if that happens for a reason, then everything else bad that happens is, I kind of sometimes feel like that's just a cop-out.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a time and place to say things like that. And truly, when people say that, I think it's really because they don't know what to say. Like, oh, it's fine. Everything happens for a reason. I mean, with decisions and past decisions, I know it's really hard to accept some of these like terrible decisions that we made. I've made some really terrible decisions in my life that I just even sometimes to think about, I'm like, oh, I didn't want to, I didn't want to remember that. I can't believe I did that. But I used to hear people say a lot, and I'm sure you've heard people say this too, and you maybe have even thought this, oh, if I could only go back. Well, you just said this actually. If I could just have this, like the gumption to do this, and if I could have just gone back, right, and like made this decision. Well, the truth is, if you could go back and whatever and do that, you'd probably make the same decision, because for one, we can't go back with the knowledge that we have right now, right? But also, whatever decision we make, good or bad, there's a reason for us making that decision in that very moment. It might not be a good reason. It might be completely stupid. There might be unhealthy reasons that we make it. But there were reasons that in that moment we said, this is what we're going to do. And maybe it was to avoid things, whatever it may be. But I don't like the saying everything happens for a reason. I think everything shapes us in a certain way, but I do think we have control over how it shapes us. And what I've learned with my own decisions that I really struggled with for a long time and just kind of wanted to bury under the rug because they were so bad and embarrassing and public, some of them, that I was like, I just don't even want to. This is too much to even face. I had to show them a lot of love. And I had to really not just accept it and say, oh, yeah, okay, I made those decisions, right? I mean, people say just accept it and move on. And there's truth to that. But I think what a lot of people don't really talk about is how we need to learn to love ourselves in those moments of really poor decisions and tell ourselves, you know what? Yeah, that was a shitty decision. I shouldn't have done that. Right? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have married this person. I shouldn't have gone out that night. I shouldn't have, whatever it may be. But we did it. And it's ugly, and it's a dark side of us, maybe. It's a dark part of our lives. But shoving it under the rug doesn't do anything. It just kind of, and saying, just brushing it off, it all happens for a reason, or I'll get over it, whatever it may be. I think we need to learn to really love and embrace that brokenness and ugliness and darkness, whatever that may be within us, whether it's past decisions or even things out of our control. And so I guess my next question is just, have you ever looked at those decisions with this particular conversation, that the decision to marry that person, and just said, you know what, I made that decision. I wish I didn't. It was a bad decision, but I accept it. And I love the person still who made that decision. I'm okay with you. And I love you for that. Have you ever tried to do anything like that before?
Not with that specific example. I have in the past with other things. And so it just reminded me, I'm parenting my daughter extremely differently to how I was parented. And sometimes I sit back and I look and I go, God, why don't I parent myself the way I parent my daughter? Because if she'll make a mistake, I will, or she'll do something that's wrong or bad or whatever word you want to use. And I'll say to her, look, honey, it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not bad. The action that you took is not ideal, but you, right, as a human being on this planet, are still lovable. Even though you did that, you are still lovable. And I think that as you were talking, that's what I heard, was this part of me said, have you ever stopped to tell yourself that you are still lovable, even though you did that? Let's talk about getting married to someone I didn't want to get married to. Even though I got married to someone I did not want to get married to, I am still lovable. Yeah, and I haven't done that. I haven't actually sat in that space and actually identified some of these key moments and said to myself, yep, okay, you fucked up. Like, you really did. That was not a good choice.
Sure.
But you're still lovable, even though you are still lovable.
Yeah. And we all have those even though moments, right? Yeah. These like pivotal moments too in our lives that I had several of them that would just kind of go on replay in my head that, I mean, truly I wouldn't even vocalize to myself by myself because I was like, no, I just can't. I need to erase that. But, it doesn't serve us well to like beat ourselves up for that. And what ends up happening when we don't just embrace and love and just say it's okay that we made these poor decisions and just like own them, but also just show them, again, just show them love. Like, what happens is we kind of end up living there mentally and emotionally at times, and then just end up getting triggered by things in our current, in the present. And then it shoots us back to whatever that feeling was, right? Of just, oh, how could I be so stupid to do this? Whatever that thought was. And it shoots us back to that moment. And again, even if we logically know this, it's like, it's obviously easier said than done. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of intention. You're a parent, so you understand, you were saying, oh, well, why don't I parent myself the way I parent my daughter? And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn, and I am still learning, and I'll probably never stop learning as a parent is like, okay, I got to practice what I preach, right? I got to practice what I preach because I can say the right things to my children as much, I can do an excellent job as that. But if I'm not exemplifying that, they notice. If I'm not giving myself love, even if I don't think I deserve it in that time, they notice it. And sometimes this isn't a good space to live in all the time, but sometimes we have to fake it a little bit with ourselves until we start believing it. And if that means telling ourselves we love ourselves, even if we genuinely don't feel it, and we can be like, yeah, okay, whatever, but just saying it and just doing it and saying it to ourselves until it becomes the truth. I mean, there's so much power in that. It's okay to tell yourself you love yourself, even if you don't believe it in that very moment. That's okay. You don't have to believe it right away. One day you will. And you got to practice it, right? Just like we tell our kids, you got to practice things right before you get better at it. You have to try something.
But then I'm guessing you then have to go into your self-value and your self-worth and decide that you are a priority to do that. Because for me, I don't do that because of that program. I'm not a priority. Absolutely, my daughter she's number one in my world, and her 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 growing up knowing that she was loved and knowing that she is safe and knowing that she is lovable is my absolute priority. And I guess it's putting me in front of her and saying, well, hang on a minute, I have to make sure that I feel safe, that I feel loved, and that I know I am lovable.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's figuring out how to move me back up there. And that's what we started this whole conversation about,
Yeah.
right? Was how do we make ourselves the priority and put ourselves first so we do actually become lovable?
Well, what would you tell, okay, your daughter's 6, right? 6 or 7?
And she's 9.
She's not, okay. What would you, if your daughter was older, grown up, an adult, and she came to you with that question, how would you answer her? And she let's say she was sharing some of the struggles that you're sharing right now, and you're like, I don't know, and she just said to you, Mom, I feel worthless. I don't feel like I know how to prioritize myself. I'm just not really sure. What would you say to her?
I would say to her to take multiple moments throughout the day to stand still, close her eyes, and breathe and tell herself that she's lovable, regardless of whatever happened in the past.
I think that's good advice. Do
I
you
think
do
it's
that
good
for
advice
yourself?
too. No, I don't.
Yeah. So this is another thing I've done with myself. This is actually what gave me the courage to leave my marriage. That was terrible. Was that I asked myself, what would I tell my kids? And I asked myself that. Now let's say this, like I asked myself that a lot. I wish I could say it was 1 or even 2 times. It was probably 100 times or so before I actually made the decision to leave that toxic situation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not overnight, but it's a really, when we're able to like look at it like that and just ask ourselves, what would I tell my kid like in this situation? It's a really interesting perspective because it makes us, it kind of separates us from ourselves, right? Because it's so easy to answer. Well, of course I know what I'm going to tell my kid, like I know how to answer that. I don't want them staying in this situation. I don't want them feeling like this about themselves. And it's so much easier. But it's also very sobering because when you hear yourself say that answer, it's like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that for myself. And I would really encourage you to even like journal about this. This is really helpful, like a really helpful thing to journal about is asking yourself, from that perspective of, okay, like in this situation, if this were my daughter, like how would I respond to her in this moment? Because it's very enlightening when we look at it from that perspective.
It is, and it kind of makes you look at it and think, why don't I do that for myself? Why don't I? And it's what I said before. Why don't I parent myself the way I parent my daughter? Because I've had people ask me, in which areas do I think I succeed in life? And I absolutely 100% know I succeed at parenting. It's probably the best thing that I've ever done, and I do it extraordinarily well. Mainly because I'm so acutely aware of my trauma. And I guess I'm so acutely aware of the fact that she cannot get through life without going through trauma, just based on who I am as a parent, but also based on the fact that my mum passed away when she was 3, that our dog had passed away, that we've lost, I don't know how many chickens over the years. And she's found one that our dog's actually attacked. She found it. And when I had her, I knew there was no way that she could get through life without going through trauma because I'm her parent. And I went, okay, I'm going to make it my sole responsibility to make sure that she has the tools to support herself through life. And that has been what I've done, is instead of trying to hide my trauma or try and save her from her own pain or her own trauma, it's no, I'm going to make sure that she has the tools that I know I have, that I don't necessarily use, but I have them.
Sure.
All of these amazing tools that I share with her constantly. And she's been raised with these tools. So she understands about the mean voice and the kind voice, and she understands about the universe, and she understands about Mother Gaia, and she understands about when people say things mean, it's got nothing to do with her. It's everything to do with somebody else. I've raised her understanding that if I'm having a meltdown, if I'm having a moment, it's got nothing to do with her. And I started teaching that to her when she was little. She was, as soon as she could understand what I was saying, she's like a year and a half. And I was having meltdowns because I was watching the first 3 years of my daughter's life was me basically watching my mum die. So I was having meltdowns, massive meltdowns. And I couldn't hide them from her because it was just so much emotion. Sure. So in the middle of me having a meltdown and she's sitting there looking at me, I would say, this has nothing to do with you. It's not about you. You have done nothing wrong. You are just someone that is seeing me going through this. But this has nothing to do with you. This isn't even about you. This is all about me. While I'm in the middle of having an utter meltdown about something that she has done. But then we would, of course, because that triggers us from our childhood, right? Where our kids do something, we're triggered, we have a meltdown about it. Yeah. And then most parents go, you did that to me. You're the reason I feel this way. And now I'm going to punish you for what you just did. I took it on from a very different perspective and went, well, you've done something. It's triggered something inside of me. I'm now acting like an asshole. I'm not going to blame you for it or punish you for it. But I can't hold it in either. And so that's how I've raised her, is to understand. And afterwards, every time I don't do it so much now. I'm not triggered as much now as I used to be for a number of different reasons. But when she was little, I would then sit down afterwards and I'd look at her and say, was I an asshole? And she'd go, you kind of were. I said, honey, but I was still choosing kindness. So I was still choosing my words. I was still very careful not to say you did this to me, or not to say it's your fault. I still held on to that kindness of how can I just express what I'm feeling without spewing my crap onto her so she thinks she's wrong. Yeah. So it took a lot of like managing and choosing my words while I was angry, and it was a very interesting process. I don't know why I brought all that up.
That's okay. That's beautiful though. I mean, everything you said is that's like an amazing. So many parents like don't do well in like high emotional times like that, and I mean, that's amazing that you're able to do that in those moments. And I think that's so much value to your daughter to see you like be able to just express yourself even in that way. And like, I mean, I don't want to say like name your emotions. I know it can kind of sound cheesy when people say that, but truly like not many people are able to do that. Not many people are able to say, well, hey, this is why I'm feeling this way, and this is what's going on, just so you know. And so that's like a huge quality. I mean, that's a really good quality in you to be able to handle something like that. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't know if you ever recognize that about yourself, but that's amazing.
I have, but I haven't. So thank you.
Well, it really is, because a lot of people, it's so much easier. Like you said, so many parents resort to being like, well, if you wouldn't have done blah, blah, I wouldn't be acting this way, right? Just like kind of gaslighting. And it's easier to respond that way. It's easier. It's easier to blame other people for how we act. It's not very easy. It's not the easiest route. It takes so much more intention to say, you know what? This isn't you. This is me. This is why I'm doing that. And so I just want to commend you for that. That's a wonderful quality. And it's a very valuable quality.
Thank you. And I will agree, it isn't easy. I definitely did choose the hard parenting route, because I would afterwards sometimes look back and go, oh, why can't I just be the parent that says, because I said so? Or be the parent that just says, no, go to your room. No, you did something wrong, go to your room. I was never, that was my parent. but I could never do that. And so it's taken me a long time to actually own. And I guess maybe I'm sharing this because maybe I can start bouncing off me having value because of this. Because we were at something that my daughter did, and the lady who was running the class, she said, okay, can everyone share a time when your parents punished you? And she was 7 or 8 at the time. I think she was 8. And yeah, so everybody, they went around the room and everybody shared a time when their parents punished them, shared, oh yeah, I remember my mum punished me for this. And she got to my daughter, and my daughter looked at her and she goes, but my mum's never punished me. She goes, no, she has to have punished you. You have to have done something wrong. She goes, oh yeah, I did things wrong, but she never punished me for them because she didn't believe in punishing me. We'd talk about it and she'd share with me how she felt about it, but she never punished me for it. And then the teacher just quickly moved on and and just kept going about the room. But then we talked about it afterwards, and she said, you've never punished me for anything. She said, I don't feel like I've ever, she said, I know when I did things wrong. I know, but also I'd also share with her that the things that she did wrong were only wrong because I perceived them as wrong, but that didn't mean that they were wrong. And I guess that's why she felt like I never punished her. I didn't ever take anything off her. Because I guess wrong is all a perception. I mean, my daughter's allowed to, because we own our house, thanks to my mum, my daughter's always been allowed to just draw on the walls or paint on, put paint on her hands and put paint on the walls and all that sort of stuff. It never really bothered me. Whereas in other houses, that's a punishable offense. But for me, it's not. And that's where I mean, action is subjective. And I've always thought that, because there was a lady who had some kids and she used to jockey strap her chairs to the table so her kids couldn't climb on the table and run around on the table. She didn't want them running around on the furniture, and they weren't allowed to stand on the furniture. Whereas in my house, I used to move the chairs around, and Bailey's done this ever since she was little. She's used our house as a ninja course. And so we would set everything up, and she would have to jump from furniture to furniture or climb across something to figure out how to get to the next piece without putting her feet on the ground. And so again, I think punishing is subjective. And I guess I need to I'm sharing this because I need to turn this around on myself and go, hang on a minute. Punishment is subjective. Did you really do something wrong? Or is it just your perspective says you did something wrong and therefore you've punished yourself? But was it really a punishable offense?
Yeah. Well, I think even a lot of times things that we punish ourselves for mentally, like long term, I know for me, there's been things in the past that I've thought about that really the reason I perceived it was wrong is because I'm thinking of it from a different person's perspective. Maybe it's my dad's perspective, maybe it's my mom's perspective, maybe it's a grandparent, whatever it may be. And I've had to step back in those moments mentally and ask myself, do I really think anything bad about this? I mean, do I think anything bad about this? Do I think this is wrong? I mean, that's part of really just rediscovering yourself too. Even, like with parenting is that, like you said, you parent your daughter very different. I parent my kids different than I was parented as well. And really just because I have different beliefs, right? I mean, on a moral perspective, no, I raise them to be kind and respectful human beings, right? But the specific things, like the specific rules in my house, are very different. Like you said, your daughter's allowed to do ninja courses around your house, so my kids are allowed to do that too. No way would I ever be allowed to do anything like that as a kid. That's not what was allowed in my household. Things had to be played with the way they were meant to be played with. Everything had to be utilized the way it was supposed to be utilized. This is what this is for and nothing else,
Yeah.
But even in relation to ourselves, like when we are beating ourselves up for things, I mean, so much of it is because we're not even really thinking from our own perspective. We're subconsciously like realizing that somebody in our past who, and it could be a lot of times it's a parent, somebody in our past perceived that to them that it was so wrong and that to them it was a punishable offense. And so we just take that on without even realizing it. And we're like, well, there you go. That's wrong because, you know, whatever. And it's just, it's this subconscious thing. We borrow these beliefs from people without even realizing that we're doing it.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
yeah, and I think that's, you know, our beliefs. I saw something recently that was like our beliefs and our values equal our identity. Beliefs plus values equal our identity. And that's a really interesting, I read that and I thought, well, that's interesting because we can choose our beliefs, right? We can choose our values, but our beliefs a lot of times are borrowed and we don't even realize it.
Mm.
And so if we're borrowing beliefs subconsciously, for whatever reason it may be, then those borrowed beliefs plus our values equal an identity of sorts, but it might not be our true identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so much of it, it's like we really have to go back to that belief system and just ask ourselves, like, and again, I always tell people to do a lot of journaling because for me it helps. I I will often tell clients like just regurgitate on the paper, you know, any thoughts that come, ask yourself a question like that's just even if it's just something like, hey, what beliefs am I have I borrowed from my dad, for example, from my father, and just regurgitate it without thought, without, you know, run-on sentences, whatever it may be, just like bleh, all over the paper, and then walk away as soon as your mind goes blank and don't come back to it for a day or two. Just get it out. And then come back to it after a couple of days of just like releasing it and reading that afterwards is so eye-opening because you realize so many things. And I do this to myself periodically because it's such an eye-opening experience and you uncover so many things about yourself, some good and some bad. I don't know if have you ever done anything like that before where you just kind of dump in a
Years and
journal?
years and years ago, when I had garbage loads of crap in my head and I just couldn't see straight. And I used to, not specifically around the beliefs, I did a combination of beliefs that I've had from family and friends and school teachers, and then my beliefs, but then also around actions.
Mm,
Back when I just had I was a real massive more doer than I am now, and I used to dump on pages every day. What do I think I need to do today? And I would just write it all out. I wasn't writing it out to do it. I was just writing it all out to get it out of my
mm,
head.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, even going back to, you know, values and like how to value ourselves. I mean, asking ourselves questions like, you know, why don't I feel like I'm valued? And what do I value in other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about me that I find worthless, right? Or whatever it may be. I mean, I know a few months ago somebody asked me if I struggled with self-worth, and I was like, no, I don't struggle with self-worth. I was like, that's not a struggle that I have. But after doing just kind of talking very plainly with a friend over the course of a few months, I realized like, wow, I really did have that struggle, right? But I didn't even realize because it was manifesting in other ways in my life. It was blocking me in my business and it was blocking me even just really just mentally. Like I just was stuck in a certain mindset, but I didn't even realize that that was rooted in low self-worth. But it took a lot of just being really honest with myself and getting it out even with other people and having them reflect things back to me, like trusted people, right? You can't just do this with anybody. Um, because sometimes are those values and those things that those belief systems that we have, they're just so subconscious. We don't even really realize all these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. And those beliefs often affect how we value ourselves, right? And how we think about ourselves. It's our inner narrative, I guess you could
Mm,
say, about ourselves.
absolutely.
So
Oh, I'm aware of the time because I just heard my cuckoo clock go off. So, so I know
Okay.
we've gone over the hour, and I also know that it is late in the afternoon and you have kids too.
Yeah, it's 8 p.m. here. I'm not sure what time it is there.
I think it's 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just starting my day.
All right.
And I can hear the
Well,
chickens have laid some eggs, so I've got to get out and get them before the goannas get them. I don't know if you
yes.
have goannas over there, but we have goannas that come and steal our eggs sometimes.
No, I don't have that. I have possums that come.
They come at night though, don't they? Aren't they
They do come
nocturnal?
at night. They do come at night, and I left the chicken coop open one night, and there was one that went and ate one of my chickens. So it's fine.
They ate the chicken.
Yeah, they ate one of the chickens. That was an interesting.
I didn't even know
Yeah,
possums ate chickens.
they will if they can sneak up behind them from behind. And I guess I don't know. Apparently they do. It did. So I saw it. I saw the possum, and I was like, well,
Wow.
enjoy your dinner. I don't know what to tell you. It's like
I will
I'll
never do
save
that again.
I'll save the rest of the chickens. Like I felt was lazy that night and didn't go outside and close the coop up. But anyways, well, I hope this was helpful. I don't know if there's anything. I hope there was something that you took away from this, but I mean, there's so many things that you presented to me tonight that show that you really do have so much value. And especially like even if it's just within parenting right now, like if that's the only thing right now that you can really say to yourself that you know you're doing great at, tell yourself that every damn day. Like tell yourself every damn day and then maybe tack one extra thing on if you can. And if you can't, that's okay too. Um, but you do have a lot to offer. And I know, I mean, I can just tell with our exchange today, like your energy is lovely. It's really beautiful. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. So, I
Thank
mean,
you. I had
yeah.
such a good time in our conversation, and I did get so much out of it. And one of the main things I got was it's actually okay to have value. I think that's something that I hadn't sat and thought. It's actually, we're allowed to have value. We're actually allowed to have value. And I feel like the conversation with you today has kind of planted that seed. I'm not saying all of a sudden I'm sitting here going, yes, I've got value. But
All
I
right.
feel like I'm healed, all my problems are solved.
I'm
But I feel like you planted a seed to say, you know what, it's actually, you're allowed to have value. You're actually allowed to have value. Not only are you allowed to have value, but you're actually allowed to say how you have value. And you gave me that space by allowing me to share the stories, and maybe I rambled a bit about the things that I did with my daughter, but you allowing me to share that gave me the space to actually vocalize and experience sharing how I feel I have value, and that has been a big gift for me today. So thank you.
Good. I'm so glad.
So I was genuine when I said that this call today planted a seed. I really feel like it has. And on the call I had, and maybe I've had the ability before, or maybe I haven't been in this position where I've really allowed myself to become vulnerable in the experience, or to actually experience the feelings, or I'm not sure what the word is, but I feel like I had permission to own where I show up in the world and how I have value. And that has been a big thing for me. I really, as I'm sitting here, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I am allowed. Maybe I am allowed to have value. Maybe I am allowed to share that I have value. Maybe I'm allowed to say that I have value. There are so many things that I'm really looking at as I'm sitting here, and I'm feeling uncomfortable, thinking, I think part of the reason why I feel like I don't have value is because I've not really felt like I've had permission and either that's permission from someone else or permission within myself, but I was definitely not raised having permission to share how I am valuable in the world. Anytime I and this is my belief system, and no one in my family will agree with me, they will all say that none of this happened. However, we all have our different experiences in our family, and we all have our different perspectives in our family of how we were raised. And in my little bubble of world, anytime I did something of value, it was punished. It was a punishable offense. And there's one in particular that has stuck with me all these years. When I was about 13, I think, and 13, yeah, it must be around 13. I can't remember exactly. But so my sister was auditioning for the school play, and I got asked to be in the school play, and she didn't get in. So because she didn't get in, I wasn't allowed in. This is my memory of what happened. Now, it may or may not be true. It may or may not be exactly how it happened. This is what I remember, and this is what that memory creates in me for value. Something of value or something of importance happened. I got asked. I didn't have to audition. They wanted me in the play. They wanted me to have that experience. And because somebody else did not get to have that experience, I wasn't allowed to have that experience. And that created a story in me. Well, I mean, there are so many different examples, but that is one of the things that created a story in me that says you have no value. You are of no value. This person is of way more value than you are, which is why you cannot do the thing that you want to do, because they could not do the thing they wanted to do. And these tiny little things create these massive, massive, massive belief systems inside us that say we have no value. And that was mine. That was one of mine. There are many, but that's the one that is constantly coming up for me over the last couple of weeks when I've been looking at value, going, where did this start? Where did this happen? Where did something happen in my life that says you have no value? And that is the memory that I have come up. So this call, I feel like it has planted a seed. It's planted a seed that says you have value. You're allowed to have value. You're allowed to say you have value. And you're allowed to experience life in a valued way. And that's the seed. So I'm really interested to see what happens over the next couple of weeks and to see what comes of that. Because as I'm learning, as all of these seeds are being planted, what is going to grow? What is, as this keeps getting watered week after week after week after week from all of these different calls that I'm having, all of these beautiful people that I am speaking to, what's actually going to grow? Like, who am I going to become at the end of the 12 months if these are all the seeds that are being planted now? I don't know. It's going to be really cool. I'm starting to kind of go, oh my God, if all of these seeds actually grow, I am going to be a completely different human being to who I am right now. And I have no idea who that's going to be, but it's going to be really cool. It's going to be a really cool journey to watch and unfold and see how all of this happens. I think that's it. Please make sure you check the description below, because all of the links will be in there if you want to go and experience coaching. If you want to go and check out my coach for today, make sure you jump on and check out the description below. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to support the channel, you can. There are links in the description as well to support the channel. And please do subscribe. We all know that subscribing really helps with everybody's channel growth, and mine is no exception to that. And I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. You can probably hear our chicken. She's probably just laid an egg. We have very loud, chatty chickens. If you can make sure you subscribe and like this video and share it if you think someone would benefit from the conversation today. And if you have a story that you want to share, if something is sitting inside of you after watching this and you want to share, you want something to be seen, you want something to be heard or acknowledged, I apologize for the chicken. if you want something to be seen, please put it in the comments below. And at the moment, I'm reading and responding to every single comment that I see. So make sure you share if you feel like there's something that you really want to share with me. Please do, and I will read it. Thank you so much for being here today. Bye.